Hey everybody, this is Brent Ingersoll, and you are about to listen to the Speaking of podcast. Today, my guests are my good friends and fellow pastors at King's Church, Adam and Julie Brewer. They run our Celebrate Recovery program. They have both amazing testimonies, and God has been doing amazing things through their lives as they lead the recovery process in hundreds of people's lives. Incredible conversation. We hit some really important stuff as it pertains to changing your life by the grace of God. I think you're going to enjoy this. Here's my conversation with Adam and Julie Brewer. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, we're excited to be invited.
Speaking of podcast collaboration, because there also is the Adam and Julie podcast.
The Adam and Julie podcast.
So, hey, look at that. We'll cross podcast here.
Yeah.
So I've been wanting to have you guys on because, I guess I should tell people who's with me today. If you're listening and you're not seeing it, we have Adam and Julie Brewer, ministry power couple from King's Church, and both pastors here on the team, and specifically have been on the kind of the front line with our recovery ministry and leading the charge with that, and just have not just incredible ministries, but just incredible stories. And so, I wanted to talk to you guys just in general, because I have my friends on the show anyway, but I wanted to talk to you about recovery and transformation, and specifically how easy it is to be a Christian, go to church, do your life, and not see a whole lot of change. And I think we've maybe experienced that in seasons of our lives, those of us who have followed Jesus. And then we've also seen people, if you've been around church, like they come, they would say they believe, but there's very little change, which seems to fly in the face of what Jesus says about following him, that we'd bear much fruit and that we'd be transformed. And so you guys have seen it in your own lives, and you've seen it in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's lives at the church and through the church. And I just wanted to talk to you about transformation, because really we're all after it.
For sure.
We're all after, real change in our lives. And if you're not, I think you're dying, because if you're not changing. So, so welcome to the show, and take a minute. Why don't you guys tell, for our listeners, I know, on your podcast and even people who are connected with King's Church, you don't need an introduction, but there's people maybe that aren't as familiar with our church or you guys.
Yeah.
Give everybody the synopsis of your story.
Wow.
Who wants to start?
Go ahead. You can start.
We've been married for 19 years now. So we met actually when we were 16, and we both come from Christian homes. We actually met at a youth group water ski camp that still goes on today.
All right.
And
you chased me down.
Yeah.
I've seen you water ski. So
it's pretty impressive.
It is. He's very good.
That's actually what caught my eye.
Oh, wow.
Well, when I saw you getting geared up to water ski.
Oh, come on. Here we go.
I said, you better be good, because this guy is putting on his gloves and a special sock. And
the gearing up part at first turned me off, because I actually thought, we were all teenagers, first time water skiing.
Look at this guy.
Nobody had their own equipment.
Yeah.
And he shows up.
I was going all the way.
He shows up with his own water ski, his wetsuit.
Yes.
And a thing that he actually put on his leg, and gloves.
Where's this going? Yeah, I know.
So my very first impression wasn't good.
Until he skied, and then you're like,
who does this guy
Until you seen me go.
And then, a few days later, but middle of the week at water ski camp, I already had my eye on a couple other guys, but by midweek they dumped me. And
so I was a leftover.
Third choice.
And Adam was water skiing, and I remember looking, and I was like, what is that? I never saw a wall of water before when somebody slalom skied. It's the first time I ever witnessed that. Good. And so,
to be fair to our listeners, I have, although I wasn't so impressed by the wall of water that I wanted to ask him out, but I did experience.
You're not too bad yourself there, Brent. Not too bad.
Oh my goodness.
Come on.
Maybe the difference is I don't have my own skis and and gloves, but
he had lots of practice at his
the
camp.
guy can water ski.
Lots of practice.
He still can actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If we need to spice up our marriage, I just get him back on the ski.
There
even
you
to this
go.
day.
Oh man.
Something about those
Something
skis.
about that. Yeah, that wetsuit.
Yeah.
We've been through a few different
with the dad
sizes,
bod. The dad bod.
The dog, yeah, that would look really cute. The wetsuit right
go
now.
a couple sizes up. But anyways,
the COVID dad bod is a real thing.
Yeah, you got that right.
That's how you know you're a good dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So we're at water ski camp.
There we go. Yeah, 5 minutes
of that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we met, we started dating, and we've been together ever since. And it's a lot of people are shocked by that and wonder how did we make it that many years? Because I mean,
a lot of work.
It's been 24 years, including our dating years. So.
Yeah, like right after I was dabbling. I wouldn't say an addict right away when we were married, but I was definitely dabbling in it. And then right after,
in what?
So, well, it all, people aren't big on the gateway, like marijuana is not the gateway drug. And I'm yet to meet an addict that has destroyed their life or really hard up that it didn't start there.
Right.
Didn't start with a few beers on the deck. Yeah. Didn't start with a few, smoking pot with your friends. Yeah. You find me a guy that's life's falling apart and ask him where it began.
Yeah. It obviously did something for you. Like there's something about it that you liked.
I remember getting high the first time,
like
and
you liked.
Thinking it was this is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
I remember it. I do. And then even later on in life, like with medications from doctors and different things, like taking that and thinking this is what I've been looking for. Like even some like ADD medication or like help, like stuff that helps. Like it does. I remember taking that for the first time and thinking this is what I've been looking for. And it's so funny. It's actually Jesus is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's like not saying those medications in some are unhealthy, but there was definitely a void within me that I believed that was filling. But
and we do look back and think like we know so much more. I mean, we're just teenagers. Right. We didn't understand it at the time, but we do see that Adam struggled with ADD, and so he has personality traits, and he's got that not going against him, but he definitely was more susceptible to
factor,
many kids probably try marijuana, but for him it was like he was he was self-medicating.
Like even like we're laughing at the water skiing, but like dirt biking, motorcycle, downhill, all of that thrill-seeking things is what I loved. Like,
and you're an all-in personality too. Like you don't.
We've talked about that, Brent. You're the same way. You're all in. Like we go.
If I'm into something, I'm all in.
Exactly.
Addictive personality.
He is.
Can be a strength and a huge weakness.
Yeah, it's his biggest strength that we see, and his biggest weakness for sure.
So marriage fell out.
I mean, I didn't know that he was doing marijuana. The most of what I knew when we were dating is he just out of the blue said, "I need to tell you that I did that a few times." Like he knew I was a Christian, and I was very much like,
I was playing Christian.
Yeah.
She was a Christian.
I was thinking that I was dating a Christian, and he had Christian family. And he just said out of the blue, I've tried marijuana, but I just want to get that out to you. So that's the extent of what I knew.
Which was your way of telling her the truth, but not actually.
Yeah, kind of testing to see what I would think of that.
And it was cocaine, like you asked earlier, what was it? Started with marijuana. Cocaine was like through our early years of marriage, multiple, for 5 years.
6 weeks after we got married, he overdosed in the middle of the night. I had to call an ambulance. His eyes were bugged out of his brain, just screaming, but he wasn't there.
And it was a mix of a couple things, and not even to get in details, but it was just.
It was very scary. Yeah. I thought he had a brain tumor, like something was. It didn't even dawn on me that it was drugs. That's how out
6 weeks, man.
Like I didn't know. So I called the ambulance. My parents just lived up the street. They came down in the middle of the night, and the EMTs. They came in and they were just screaming at me saying, "What is he on?" And I didn't even know what that question meant. That's how green I was. I had no idea.
Wow.
And so, just sitting outside the emergency room, his parents came and my parents were there. And I remember going in and seeing him in the emergency room, and he kind of came to, and the only thing he said was like, "You're an idiot. Like, I'm on drugs." Like, and then he just kind of went back to sleep, and I left with my parents and
man.
packed a bag. I went
man.
home, and then he took it all back and was trying to say that wasn't true. And anyways,
so I don't remember that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But obviously when I got home,
yeah,
you came back.
I came back within a couple of days.
You did know the truth at that point.
Yes, you said, this is what's happening, but I'm glad that you know, because I wanted to stop, and now it'll be easy to stop. And so it just kind of went on. It went that way.
And it was on and off for years,
Yeah.
Brent. And then, it was just like, it's funny, we're talking about recovery. I never bowed the knee to recovery. I was never going to do like recovery for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Like I'm not signing up for that, man. Like there's no way am I going to be like
but
that person.
we didn't even really know of any options.
I did. Yeah. Because I knew like from just TV and different things like AA, NA, I wasn't signing up for that. Like there's no way I'm going to sit in a circle with a bunch of guys until like we know guys that have been sober for 30 and 40 years and they're still going.
Right.
They're Christians and love Jesus. Like I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing that, guys. I can kick this and I'm going back to work. And
it seems like a bridge that's just, like, it's just, I can't do that. I'd love to get help, but there's no real options for me. So I guess I'm just going to sort of white knuckle it.
And I don't want to leave out, like, along the same line, like as Adam was in this unhealthy pattern. I mean, now looking back, I've learned so much. I can see that obviously there was unhealthiness on my part, right?
Sure.
Like right from the start. Not like people would say to me, like, if I was in your same situation, like I wouldn't have just kept like believing him and kept
people
going with
say
it.
that though, and it's the same story with everyone.
It is. But,
and then so years later, like it was in and out,
right.
and like the thing is you always go back. It's like the drug addict that decides you can drink or do this or buy things you can't afford or feel that you always end up back to the drug of choice. Typically, is the model. And for my story, it was always kind of a new drug of choice.
Yeah.
And so then I did go to rehab later on in our marriage, about 4 years.
It was 5 years.
Yeah.
So after 5 years, things appeared to be really getting bad again. Like for 5 years, I didn't know if he was using, and people would keep asking me, how's Adam doing? And he did seem to be better somewhat, but then by 5 years it had gradually been getting worse and worse. Like the weight was falling off. He was just missing for large amounts of time with no explanation. Money was missing, stuff like that. And so also, like, all of our friends were having children and I wanted children, but like it just, we weren't even having sex. Like it was I didn't know if he was using, but I knew that it was bad. Like I remember saying to people, I don't know if he's using, but I can't stand
And with what
him.
I was using, we not even to get grosser details, but you couldn't have sex. Like it's humiliating, man. It just robs everything.
Yeah.
Everything that you love, man. Everything.
So I was mad at God. Like I was just an anxious mess. I couldn't even put words to what was going on. I just hated my life. I wasn't like, anything we got invited to, I'd have to try to convince him to come. So I was going to church by myself. He'd be in bed, and it just wasn't the life I signed up for. I didn't know. All my friends were having kids, like I said, and that's all I wanted in life. I mean, I think I even went into marrying him blind because my goal was to get married to a Christian man. We'd go to church, we'd have kids, and just wasn't happening. And I didn't even really know why, because I mean, he was so convincing. I didn't really think he was using, but I just knew that it was bad. So so then at 5 years we found out, I found evidence that in fact he was using, and I asked him to leave, and that's when he went to rehab for the first time.
Yeah, and that was a 6-month vacation.
And that really helped though, right? Like, I mean,
that's where I got introduced to recovery.
Yeah, it did.
That's people get mixed up on recovery. Like they think it's just for like actually life recovery.
Yeah.
Right.
I got introduced to Jesus in
a
like
different
the Holy
way. Spirit.
Like the church. Yeah. Like the church I grew up in not knocking it, but like the Holy Spirit and those type of things, it just wasn't part. And with my personality, those things are super important to me, like worship and I was introduced to that at this place, Jesus within that type of recovery, like applying him to the steps and him to life and what it looked like, and around a bunch of men, all the way from like Navy SEALs. I had a Navy SEAL with me. I had a Ranger. We had firefighters. We had cops. We had, it was just, there was about 20 guys there at a time. And I got introduced to just, it's like, wow, I'm not alone in this.
Right.
And some of these guys are getting some serious recovery.
Yeah.
Because we'd see guys graduate out of it. There'd be guys that'd be working there. They got years. So that changed my life. And we came home.
You were a different person.
I was a different, well, Jesus. Yeah, it was different. We came home and it was exciting.
Yep.
And not that we don't want to go too long on this part, but I had a shoulder injury. And
we had our kid. That's when we had our kids. I remember I made that decision. Am I going to stay or am I going to leave? And like, cause this could happen again, but I decided, I had already been with them that long. And so it was a very big decision for me to decide I'm going to stay.
Right.
So then we had,
and we did get plugged, and we had our kids, and I was plugged into our church, different church than the one we're actually working at or part of now, but, we were plugged in, but still on the recovery side. I wasn't doing the AA. Like I was going to serve in the church.
Yeah,
and that
we
was
were
it.
young. Like we were young. We
28.
But and we were still green in the fact, like we didn't know anybody else that were going through anything like this. And we both thought that he was healed. When he came home from recovery, we thought he's healed. Like he was a different person. Yeah. We didn't even know,
oh man,
this is something he's going to have to keep working on.
With people everywhere. It was just like, it was
he's
awesome.
a total, he's like he is now. Like it was transformed.
Mm-hmm. Right. But there's still a deep work that I wasn't willing to go to. I wasn't willing to go to a place that God wanted to go to.
Right.
I just wasn't. I knew I'd come to church and it was good, and I was journaling. And I can flip through those journals and look, and, I had some opportunity to help with some young adults and some different things, but I remember there was a place within me that I wasn't willing to go. There were sacrifices what I wasn't willing to make. I did get my electrical license in that time. I worked for
started working for my dad,
which was amazing. That was cool.
Yeah.
But there was a place that I wasn't willing to go. And then things started creeping in. I didn't want to go to church as much.
Yep. We both, when we had our kids, we were on fire. Like we were doing our devotions every day. Like we were praying together, all that. And for me, it was when we had the kids, I just, stopped doing my devotions and stuff like that. So we both just kind of just that slow fade. And then the shoulder, right?
And the shoulder, I wasn't even, but it's funny. I didn't think I was primed, but I was primed. And I don't want to say the devil made me do it, but man, when he laid it in front of me, he knew it was time to lay that in front of me. And I rejected it 2 or 3 times from the doctor.
So this is opiates from the doctor.
So back up. You had a shoulder surgery, and then
I had an injured shoulder.
Pain meds.
So before the surgery, you went a couple of years with the meds.
Yeah, before the surgery.
You didn't have
surgery. I hurt my shoulder. They gave me medication.
Yeah.
I was on it, had the surgery, and then couldn't kick it.
Right.
And I knew, I remember driving, it was actually by the Rossay Commons. I remember one day it's crazy how that message, that's why I love what Jesus says, it transformed you by the renewing of your mind. Because I sat there and I actually said out loud, I said, I have a choice. I said, you know what? I'm not going to quit these. I started doing a little withdrawal, knew I needed more. Said, I'm not going to quit this. I'm going to lie about it. And it's going to be a crazy long road. And at that moment, I made a conscious decision outside of everything I believed and wanted to pursue that addiction. I remember I could take you to the spot saying, well, I've been here before and I'm not going to stop. And this is going to suck. It's going to tear Julie apart, the kids. And then we tried many ways to stop on our own and all those things. And we ended up at King's.
Yeah.
I was in a group with you, Brent, and struggling. We know.
I remember.
It was bad. And just broke. Cause at that point, man, I love Jesus. I loved him. And,
but I think about how, and I think I'd love to get both of your perspectives on this. Because it's not just this story of transformation isn't just Adam's, like God's changed you too, Julie. And I think that's one of the, maybe a misconception we can talk about is that not just recovery, but this idea of transformation is something that God is interested in doing in everybody all the time.
In everybody, for sure.
And I was one of the things I learned when you guys started Celebrate Recovery at the church was, it very quickly puts into perspective how it's not just the addicts who keep it at arm's length, but people who might not be struggling with drug use, and they'll think that CR or Celebrate Recovery, the ministry that you guys run, is for people who have problems. I don't need that.
I know.
And it's like it's such a more far-reaching conversation.
For
The idea
sure.
of transformation is central to being a Christian. So I
Yeah.
want to hit both of your stories on this, but I look back, Adam, at that time when we first started crossing paths, and we had a little men's group we were running. For whatever reason, I felt I invited you in, and I look back at you. I try to imagine you then, up in comparison to who you are now. I don't even know that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Like that.
I know.
Like you. I literally had a hard time talking to you because I didn't think you could hear me beyond 4 or 5 words. So I literally remember, like, as soon as you start talking to Adam, you go into 2 or 3 sentences and he's off somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Like even just attention span, like your
That's
physicality has changed, let alone like your spirit and your temperament and all that.
Yeah.
And I think about just that time and how different you are. And like, I think that's the most beautiful part of your testimony is it's so, it's just so obvious, that God has done a work in you, and that you really have, again, I know you real well. We know each other. We're close enough to each other to see past the mystique of, oh, that's Adam, the CR guy, and that's Pastor Brent. Like we see each other's humanity. We know we're not perfect, but I also know that, man, like there's been legitimate, real, like forever transformation that's happened in your life, and you've been able to reproduce that in other people's lives. And I guess the big question I want to lob to you guys is, based on your story and then your experience with helping others find their own road to not just recovery but transformation, and like maybe that's the kind of the cool thing is there's a conversation about recovery, like kind of restoration and rebuilding what the enemy's stolen. But then there's like, God wants to take you beyond recovery into like transformation and into like
into
improvement,
that's right.
And so the first thing I'd love to hear you guys speak on, because I've always been a bit intrigued by this too, because as a preacher or as a pastor, I'll see, even in one family unit, I'll see a new family come, and I'll see maybe the mom or let's not typecast that. It usually is the woman, but maybe the dad just like ignites and something shifts and something happens. You can see real change happening, but then within the same family, the same people sitting in the same row, getting the same information and the same opportunity with the same Jesus, not experiencing the same thing. And like, you guys, what are the big kind of like separators that like, if these things are present, that's going to indicate that transformation is really possible versus, I guess just what separate, like in your mind, because you see it all the time. You see people come and go from, Celebrate Recovery or King's Church, and then you'll see some people come and they're changed. And what are the big separators?
The biggest thing for people, it usually boils down to broken relationships in their past, like past people that have hurt them. And so, or shame. It's like one of the two. It's either shame for something that they've done that they don't feel like they can share, like it's too shameful. And so it's stuff that they've never shared, or it's people that have hurt them in their past and they haven't been able to get past that.
Unforgiveness is huge. I had a lot of that in my life that I didn't even know I had. I received forgiveness. But man, how can I receive so much forgiveness if I'm not willing to forgive, which we know is biblical. And it was huge. But like, even just some of the practical thing that you're saying about Brent, like, okay, how come that family's getting it and how come this family isn't? Like, what is it? The big thing is doing the hard things. Like, good intentions aren't enough. And you've preached that. Like,
right.
They're just not enough. So you know what? You need to go home and put a password on your computer so your wife knows everything that you're looking at. Like, are you willing? Well, you know what? God's big enough to do that. Like, I gotta have a phone in my pocket that, you know what, if I don't want to do it, I just won't do it. It's like, that's not like the good intentions. A certain degree of enough.
Desperation maybe is the word.
First of all, the brokenness before God, and say, like when you see those tears going, like I won't give names, but I know guys that have come where there's the openness and this sincere brokenness of not being caught or not just wanting what the pastor has, but actually brokenness before God that I'm a train wreck.
Admitting that.
Like totally. And then starting to receive that real forgiveness, not masking the past.
Let's go in there for a second, because I remember, like, that's really where our story started was you had desire. You knew what you were doing was destructive. And like I think I've heard you tell the story, maybe like come to church and cry every weekend, like the brokenness thing's there.
Yep.
But then there's something else, like there's still like and I think you were referring to it earlier about like a compartment that I'm just unwilling to let go of yet. And like, what's the difference between, obviously this one step, and maybe we can talk about the 12 steps, but like one of the steps is just like admission, right? Like that type of like admitting that this is a problem and that I'm incapable of, I don't know the actual words for.
That's good.
But
you're
like,
right on. Yeah.
That's obviously a huge step, but then there's that piece of like permission. I don't know if that's an actual step or not, but that like, God, I'm done trying to protect this thing.
It is.
Yeah. It's admitting that we're powerless on our own.
Yeah.
Like I'm powerless over my tendencies. Cause you said I would leave church, I would cry and I'd leave church.
Yeah.
And I had all the intentions of the world of changing, but there was no way I was going to I'm going to do this and no one's going to find out what I did.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to do it. And you know what? The things and the secrets, God's big enough. He's forgiven that. It's gone. It's buried. Nobody's ever going to know. And I'm going to be healed and made whole.
And
it just never, it never did.
And I think for you, like, even when you were, in Brent's group and stuff, like you've always, like, you've been able to admit so much, but it's always in the past. He's always had a hard time admitting what's happening right now.
Yes.
And so getting so real, like right now I'm using and I can't stop. But he could say, I've struggled with addiction or whatever. It's not so bad right now. So
keep it at arm's length.
Yeah. And that's a trick of Satan, man. Like he wants, I think he's in favor of us admitting some of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Like, that's
if
weird.
It keeps us in the present locked up, if I can put that over there.
So you feel a little bit better, a little bit of freedom, but not, you never get
that
and we see that now
in recovery where people, it's funny. People will share their testimonies and some of them aren't around. And we know that it wasn't complete freedom. There's still stuff there that, like, just even as some, like when they, it's just not enough. That there's more there. And we're hoping that sharing a bit will give us the freedom.
Right.
It will temporarily until the street light, like I said, until I get down the road, I feel good, but it's not enough.
And speaking of testimonies, when you were asking Brent, like, a couple, they might be coming to church and one of them is getting it and the other's holding back. I do find with Celebrate Recovery, the testimonies are a huge part. When people see like our leaders that they didn't know them in their past life and they just think, oh, we look at leaders like they're different. They're not, our participants that come probably think that they're not anything like them. Like, and they hold them up on this pedestal. But when they hear where they were, it gives people permission to share where they're at and they feel safe to share it. And as soon as that happens, as soon as they can let their guard down and feel safe and they admit it and get to that point, that's where the magic happens.
Right. And like admitting it in real time.
Yeah.
Here, right now, this is a problem. I think that's a huge observation of like, you can't, like the work that God wants to do in us is at ground zero. And a lot of the time, it's like, right. It's in us now. And I think we're more comfortable with God working on the old us or a version of us that, is over here. And I think I think about your story, Adam, and it's like, and I think God does this for everybody at some level, but it's almost, you think about how, okay, you're the revelation after you got married, this is a problem. You go to rehab, you get quite a great degree of freedom for a while.
7 years. 7 years.
But, and if you didn't injure yourself, it might have gone a lot longer than that. But there was like a gateway. There was like an entry point that that circumstance and then that opportunity exposed something that obviously was still in there.
Exactly.
Right.
And
that's good. That's exactly
and then
right.
like you relapse into a different drug this time, but same idea.
Yeah.
And then, but then like when we pick up, you know, however many years ago it was, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I don't even remember now. It feels
5
like,
years.
yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, you could see God. One thing I think this is one of the reasons I was drawn to you was I just knew God was not letting you off the hook. And he wasn't, and he was like, he kept zooming in almost on you. Like he just kept squeezing you to where you couldn't wiggle out of it.
And he still is.
Yeah.
He
Yes.
still is.
And the thing is,
that's what he does.
I know. And who you surround, that's another thing, is who you're actually surrounding yourself with. Like I was starting now to be around some people that knew what's up, like Holy Spirit wise, like you and Dan and Anthony and different guys in the
couldn't
church.
hide.
Like, and that's the thing when you keep coming, like even through that, Brent, like those men's groups I was using, but I came.
Yes.
Because I knew, and it's like, okay, I gotta come. Like church, we never missed. We came, and you know what? People start to get around you, and you can escape, and God will use that. See, and that comes back to relationships, I guess. But it's like these people knew that there was
you
something.
Genuinely had an interest. It's not like you were just trying to fake me out and go to church. I mean, he's been called to the ministry since he was a young boy. He remembers that his grandfather was a pastor, and I mean, you're just born to be a pastor.
I remember in church camp when I was like 16, I remember deliberately, there was a call, and I remember deliberately saying nope and going to the bathroom and bailed. I was about 16, 17, just when I met you. Probably.
There's an interesting thing that God does. Like, I don't think God ever forces any, like at the end of the day, we're creatures that have free will, and we can choose to reject God. And we see, see people do that all the time. And and even those of us who would say, you know what, I've given my life to God. Like, I hope I don't reject him, but there are times where he shows me in hindsight areas that I have. And so we're constantly doing that. But I think though, man, God won't overrule us or override our will, but man, he will hunt us down relentlessly and
he'll give us lots of opportunities to choose him again. I
mean, I see this. You guys probably see it even more overtly because you see people maybe dealing with, you know, like it says in one scripture, I think it's in 1 Peter, it says like some people's sins, they go out in front of them and you can just see it. Other people's, they're better at hiding it and it's in behind, but everybody's got issues. That's basically what it's saying. But, you know, you probably see people basically fleeing when it gets too real. And they feel like there's this moment where God like zooms in a little bit more. It's like, we're going to deal with this and I'm not letting it go. Like what have you seen that much where people like they were no longer at a safe distance where God like forced them to have to deal with something, and instead of like yielding to that, they bolt?
Yeah, a lot of people don't get past step 4, which is the inventory, and it's the hardest part. It's getting real and actually digging up the past.
Okay.
And
it's not so much digging up the past.
Right. It's not going and sitting there. It's just acknowledging it to get rid of it.
Right.
And move past it.
Right.
But that's the hardest part. And the other thing we see is people come, they're so broken and they get a little bit of recovery and it's like they got enough.
Right.
That like they don't know how much God wants to free them up and how much he has for them. They just feel so much better because they were so bad off. And it could be as simple as finding like a boyfriend or a girlfriend that we see. And it's like they were alone, broken, they lost everything. They come, they're getting a little bit of freedom. They're getting new friends. They get, you know, they're interested in someone, they're gone.
Yep.
They're gone.
They meet a girl or a guy.
Then they're done.
They're done.
They got,
and they might have,
they didn't want,
they might have come.
Sorry, it's the delay. But like I think that exposes though, they wanted help, not transformation. And they wanted help in their life, right? Which is fine. I mean, that's human and natural, but there's a difference between a yieldedness that says, God, I need you to change me utterly versus I'm going to go to King's Church or go to recovery and hopefully I can get some help. And then when I get there, You know, I meet some new people, like you said, get some good things that maybe help me feel a little better. It's like that feeling you get when you go to the gym the first week, you know, like I'm a healthy person.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and then it's actually, that can be the very thing that dupes you into, you know, just relapsing back into being chubby and out of shape, because
totally.
you know,
Everybody knows when you go to the gym the first time, you're looking in the mirror when you get home.
Yeah.
It's happening. Oh
Right.
yeah. It
or
is.
you just go out and buy a new pair of jeans that fit, and you're all good.
Right. And then you fall off the wagon again.
Yeah,
Right?
But I love to use a friend's name, and he wouldn't even care. But I love just Chuck is a great friend of all of us.
Yeah,
And,
Chuck Landers.
But the
guy.
persistence in that guy's recovery is, it's like he made mistakes, and he was here, and he was setting chairs up, and he was taking chairs down, and he was like, I'd say, Chuck, go lead the group, and he's like, what do you like lead the group? Like I can't, like, and he would do it, and he would, and it's just. And we've seen in that progress longer and longer and longer periods of recovery, which really is the whole period is recovery.
I think he's done 5-step studies.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. And he, like, if we called him right now, if he's not busy, like he's not codependent. I don't mean that, but he understands the process, that this is a journey. And most people don't. Like Julie said, they come, they get it. We see it at church on Sunday. They come, the emotions, the worship. They're there for a month. They're my best volunteer. And then it's poof. It's just because, like you said, Brent, the sins behind us are a secret. We're not willing to let him in that place.
I often say when I meet with a new believer, like especially someone who, and you see this a lot, especially in recovery ministry, because you see such incredible, you know, moments of encounter with the Lord, and people just get lit on fire really fast. And I always tell people when they first start following Jesus is like, okay, this is awesome. Amazing how you feel right now. But following Jesus isn't a feeling, it's a lifestyle. This is about establishing new patterns in your life and new strength around yourself, and giving God permission to have access to everything. And
right. We're operating.
Go for it.
No, I want you to finish your thought. I think
I forget.
Okay. I was going to say, when you were saying the high, when people first receive Jesus, it's because that part, there's no cost. It's free.
Right.
That's the free gift, man. Like you're operating, like opening the present Christmas morning. Like I'm rocking a pair of Yeezys, man. This is cool. Like they're brand new, but the cost comes later.
Do you ever see, like, is it in your, you know, how have you ever seen, or do you often see people will come to CR or come to King's Church, and like that's just clearly, like that's just their current drug of choice?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. And that's important as us as leaders, to actually talk to that and challenge it.
Right.
It's funny, like some people will kind of like, hey, I want to host, I want to lead, I want to do this. And saying no to that is huge. Like that, the person, it's discernment, which I believe is from God in that. But yes, we do. It's definitely the drug of choice. And man, that's so dangerous. That's a trap that can last a long time. A long time.
Yeah. People come, and I mean, it is exciting to worship, and you sense the Holy Spirit, and that's kind of, sometimes people just come for the main session and they don't even go to group, or they don't, or they go and they just share surface level. But if you don't actually do the steps, like for yourself, if you don't actually do the work, I mean, it is just a feeling.
One of the things I think, even as a church, we were so attracted as a recovery program, you know, Brandon, the team, and we chose Celebrate Recovery as the material for this time. And one of the things I loved about that is, for leadership, you need to go through it all first.
Right.
Like you're not, like, they make it's 10 to 12 months, which I think is what I loved about that program. It weeds it out a lot.
I've never seen anybody go through it. Like, we've had people that want to help out, or actually even myself, when I first started, I thought, I don't really need it, but I guess I have to go through this. But everybody is like, I'm so glad I went through that. Like there's so much that it's crazy.
It is. The
it
process
really
is key.
Yeah.
That's huge. What do you say? Like, let's jump on that. Cause like, I think, again, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, we didn't really dive into it. Just this idea of misconceptions about everyone's on a recovery and restoration and transformation journey. You know, like how have you seen just maybe misconceptions about that conversation, especially in the church? You get a lot of people who, you know, they go to church, they maybe don't have a son or a daughter or a spouse who's dealing with addiction. And so everything's sort of, you know, normal, but they exempt themselves, like they're not part of this, or they couldn't benefit from this. What's some common maybe recurring themes you see?
The biggest one is codependency. That's what I see. And broken relationships. If you have people that you are bitter towards, or just unmended relationships, that affects people like a great deal. And
like your life, it affects your life.
It affects everything. I mean, I just did a podcast with Stephanie, shared her testimony last night, and she'd be a perfect example of that. I mean, she had so many people, her mother, her father, abusive boyfriend, so many people that hurt her in her life. And it affects everything. Everything about you. Everything.
It rewires who you are. Like, even it just does, like depression, that like, a lot of things are caused. We see it in a lot of divorce and separation. It's just the healing. It's like, I'm moving on. I'm forgetting about that. We're cutting it. You get half, I get half, and now we're going to be fine. Like,
if you don't get healing, you're going to find a new relationship. It's going to be exciting for a while. And this is what we even see with people that come temporarily to CR. They might come because they just got a divorce. They're a wreck. They're a mess. So they come. They meet somebody else. And so it's new, it's exciting. They feel they came and got what they wanted, but there is something in them why the divorce happened. It might look like it was the spouse, but they're going to walk right in. They'll probably, if it was somebody who's married to an addict, like for me, if I had left Adam and I never got recovery, I would have walked into the same thing, because there was things in me. There was reasons that I was attracted to that, and that I was an enabler and codependent and controlling and a fixer, all those things.
The addiction. It's so funny. When I first met you, you were like behind me, and with like, if I said we're doing this or buying this or buying this house, she's like, yep. And it's so funny. It's turned you into like a boss. It's like, no,
I'm a
that's
different
not
person.
Yeah. Like, you shut me down when I need to be shut down, where before it's like, you're my woman. And you're to leave, right? No, seriously, that's when I met you. You were innocent. You were. You're a boss now, though. Like,
I was very shy.
You sometimes have some like, can we go back?
Can we go back? Yeah, I'm sure I'm still damaged a little bit. Maybe
I've told my wife this before. I was like, I was attracted to you because you're smart and you aren't a pushover. Man, some days I wish you were just a dumb blonde that would just smile and nod at me and do what I say.
I know. I'm definitely not the same person I was when we first met.
It's not. But like you were saying, people in recovery, they would come to celebrate recovery, or any recovery, like, I guess it's King's Recovery at the moment. They would come and I'm coming. I want to pray. I want to sit in the back of the room and pray over you guys. That's what I'm doing.
Right. Yes.
They're in the back row crying, and they come to me and they say, I'm just going to come for a while. I'm not going to pray. And I'm talking to people that are influential and love Jesus. I'm not saying like their faith isn't real. And even like volunteering in our church and effective and loving people, it's just like, they're thinking, if I want to go to where Jesus is calling me, I need to work on that little thing that I know in there that no one else does.
I mean, it's the testimonies. That's the craziest thing. When people hear testimony, people who came and just brought their person that they're trying to help.
That's the funny thing.
They hear a testimony and they're like, oh my word, I've codependency. Or
how many times have we seen the person they came with, like, hey, I'm bringing a friend tonight. Where the friend is still with us and the person that brought them isn't.
For sure.
So many, because the person that was bringing was, hey, this is, I'm riding on that high. This is my new
fixing
thing.
people. And then
the person that, it's just awesome how God works. And it's just neat.
Wow. So, I wanted, so like this idea again, like I'm so interested in this conversation, that's because like there's so many cool testimonies and stuff that comes out of recovery ministry, but there's also some principles that we can apply for everyone, even if you're not dealing with addiction or like an overt addiction or like stuff that, you know, for the person who's never going to walk into an AA meeting or a CR gathering or any of that stuff, like the reality is the call of God on everyone's life is actually transformation. Like the Bible tells us that we're supposed to be changed from glory to ever increasing glory. So we're supposed to be evolving and growing and changing. And we should not be the same person, you know, a year from now or 5 years from now that we are right now. I hope I'm more like Jesus in a few years. And I hope that, honestly, it shouldn't just be Adam. I'm willing to bet on the track you're on, you know, 5 years from now, when we have this conversation, we look back and like, man, I don't even recognize us 5 years ago.
Yeah. Right.
Hopefully. Right. Like it shouldn't just be reserved for the major, I was hooked on pain opiates and now I'm not. Like that shouldn't just be a testimony. It should be like, I was a cranky, short-fused jerk, and God's given me such a new level of peace and patience. So like, transformation is really the goal of following Jesus. Like it's not just, and I know all three of us grew up in church, and maybe I would say, you know, my misconception of the invitation of Jesus on my life was follow Jesus and go to heaven. And that's actually not what Jesus came to do. And like, you know, he says, like, if you remain in me, you'll bear much fruit. Like you'll be like me. You'll actually do the things that I do. He said, like, so that's a really awesome present invitation on our lives. And so here's what I want to ask is, who does well? Like, if you were to take a case study on the person that you saw, whether it's your own life or you probably get even better perspective watching others do it than in your own life. You get kind of that third, you know, third party view, you know, who does well? Like what are the mile markers? Like we talked about one thing about surrender and admission, but like how does Chuck like become a success story? What are the components that, hey, look, if you're a believer and you approach your faith with these things in mind, you do this, you don't do this, you beware of this. What are some of the handles, like for people listening today, that are like, you know, I'm struggling to try to like forgive or whatever. Like what are some transformation handles beyond just the easy answer of, well, Jesus? No, how do we actually take hold of that and see changes happen?
I think one of the big things is the whole accountability, bringing that into your life, the ones that take that serious and just continuing to share. So we see people very broken come and get healing from their main issue. But this is an ongoing thing for the rest of your life, because we all have new things. And when you make that part of your life, like people that come and like not leave after a year, but they decide, no, I need this forever. I need to share. Because in James 5:16, where it talks about, you know, when you ask forgiveness, when you pray to the Lord and ask forgiveness for your sins, you're forgiven. But until you share with another person, you aren't healed. And so it's when people bring that into their lifestyle ongoing, sharing with their accountability, or just coming to CR and sharing weekly about what's going on in their life now. That's huge.
Accountability is huge. And just if you were to even, let's just even look at if we just even looked at staff or churches, let's look at a church type setting. Our staff that are most influential and have the most influence, we know, and I know right now, are the ones with accountability. They just where we actually, like Brent and I both, he has his group, I have another one, but like we don't miss. Like very seldom. I have a few different accountability things where that has been transformational in my life in a sense. And do I want to do it? Nope. Do we miss some or try to change it? Yep. But man, I know if you look through any type of leader, there's a type of accountability, whether it's, you know, you're a Christian or you're not. Like if you're leading at a high level, there's people you're accountable to more so than the one that isn't. So in Christianity and in following Jesus, like the components definitely is accountability and that's the one that most people won't do.
And that's a step beyond just community, right? You can you can be a part of a community, but someone doesn't have permission to have access. Like accountability is access and authority. There's a level of like, I know I need to actually be able to give an account to this person, and I've submitted that, I've given them that authority in my life to have a voice.
That's right.
And I think the big thing that undermines transformation a lot of times in our lives is, I mean, you already spoke to it, Adam, is like it's isolation. It's like, how can I keep this at arm's length? Can I keep people at arm's length? As soon as you open the door of accountability, you're blowing that whole,
that's right,
you know, that dark place up where that funk can, that stuff can grow. You know, someone can come and, you know.
It is. And the thing is too, on the accountability is I can see certain people with their accountability partners, those that I know who their accountability partner is, and it's even in a codependent accountability. Like I know that accountability partner is not going to bring the best out in that person.
Right.
It's not going to actually help.
We always say
like,
you can fire your accountability.
Yeah, but
partner.
I can pick an accountability partner that is soft for me.
So what do you look for? What do you look for in like what's healthy accountability look like?
It's not necessarily, we always say it's not your best friend. It's not something that, is going to turn into that. It's almost better if it's not, but it's just somebody that is walking, that is further in the recovery than you. And it's especially good if it's in that same area, but just somebody that's committed to you, to hold you to accountable to what you ask them to.
Like some questions, like we all know,
questions.
We give them questions that we ask each other. But it typically it can turn into quite a deep friendship, I believe. But lots of times it doesn't start
for that
way.
purpose.
If you pick the person that's super comfortable, it's just, you tend to never get to where you're supposed to get in that meeting. Next thing you know, I'm talking about street bikes and even church.
If it's a family member or you may not want to disappoint them. Like if you become too involved, then some people struggle with codependency and not wanting to disappoint them, and then they share less.
So I'd say like the first thing definitely was accountability. And we need to be looking for that, typically a different personality than you. Like if I found someone that's the same as me, that's not super healthy. So my accountability is actually, it's funny, they'd be the same Enneagram as Julie. It's just, it happened to be. And we're totally different, but
what are your guys' Enneagrams?
I'm a 5.
I've done it a few times. I tend to be, you're thinking I'm close to a 3, but it's an 8. 8 and 3 are similar. It comes out 8 or 3 for me every time. So anyway, but
so accountability. And
accountability. And I was just going to say, if you find a good accountability partner, you're blessed. And we can't forget, like, we need to pray and ask God to show us who that is. People ask us all the time, can you get me an accountability? No, we can't. No.
We can help.
We can give you ideas or keep our ears open for somebody looking. But if you pray and ask the Lord, because it can be a lifelong thing, right? It's somebody that's going to walk with you for the long run.
Yeah, definitely.
Accountability.
It should be a lifelong thing.
It should be. Accountability. And then the second thing is serving, like to actually help somebody else. And especially in your lane, like if it's like,
if you're a host, if you like to make meals, if you're
but I was going to say, like, for me, when I hear of a wife whose husband is an addict, like my heart just breaks for them. Right. And that's just, those are my people. And
so I would say, like,
because Chuck, like we were saying, Chuck, that's what he does.
But accountability and then
generosity, I guess, is how, if we're going to make a sermon here, and we started with accountability, generosity. I think that's a huge biblical principle, because the moment you stop giving, like, grace stops flowing. Like things start to stagnate, and the people, like, you know, we look at like you guys just immediately. You know, Adam, you ended up, you know, we sort of paused your story. You end up kind of coming to a moment of crisis, and then you went off to get basically a season of help and health again. Yeah. And coming off the heels of that, instead of kind of coming back to your normal life and just sort of trying to figure out a new rhythm, you started giving yourself to the church, to like getting just as involved as whatever, basically whatever would be put in your hands, even if it seemed like
I know
too small or too little, or too small or too large, either one. You're like, all right, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah, I know. And
I think
that
that's
was
a
the
key.
second thing I was going to say was the generosity in the submission to generosity, like the leadership and those around me asking me to do certain things. It wasn't always the thing I loved or wanted. Maybe it was behind the scenes and no one would ever notice. With my personality, of course, I like attention sometimes or be noticed, but I just did it, and we did it. And it was funny, the time that we spent at the church for me, not even as much for me, was a sacrifice on my family. It really, but we understood as a family there was going to be no family if I didn't make that sacrifice for that season. Like it was nonstop. Everything I could do to be here was in. Now, yes, it didn't go forever. My family started to heal, and I was able to, like, recovery gave me an allowance to be able to miss a little bit. The longer I was in it, it's like, yeah, I could take a week off. You know what? Or I could, but there was a season where I couldn't. Like,
but
I needed to
it
be
was
as generous.
God's grace that I got involved, because we've said before, like if he just went and started CR and I was home, that would have been, I was so broke. Our family was broken. We would have been done, because we needed so much healing. And if he was like meeting all these new people, and I mean, we were here all the time. Like if that was his thing, I don't think that would have been good. I don't think we would have been together.
You would encourage, like, if there's a listener out here who maybe their spouse is like involved in church or in recovery, you know, do that as a family.
Try it.
Do it. Maybe someone, you know, let's just be real, in some marriages, you know, I think we all can be very selfish in our own marriages and self-motivated. Even love yourself enough to invest yourself in their recovery, because your life's going to get better.
Exactly.
There's
nothing better than a husband and wife coming.
I went into it with not selfish intentions. I mean, I didn't go to help others, really. I went so my husband would get better. That's the only reason why I helped. But then come to find out, I needed it so much.
No, totally. But I think you're like, Brent, that is good, that a husband and wife, man, if they can come together, even if the wife is just thinking, you know what, I'm believing in what they're telling me. I don't know if I need it, but I'm going to go and I'm going to do this as a family thing. And this is, and even like our kids, like, yes, I work at the church. We both do. And that's even that rolled into a pastoral role for sure. But even before that, like our kids knew Tuesday night, that was Tuesday night and Sundays, they're off limits. Like they're not, and it's so funny. Well, I can't commit every Tuesday night. People say, I ran a business. Julie and I ran a business. And we worked here, and you remember me begging you pretty much for a job. It's like, I can't do this. And then you'd say, well, do you have a schedule? And I'm like, well, no, not really. He says, why don't you try that first? And then I'd have a schedule, and we do it. But you can make room for Sundays and Tuesdays. And like you say, we're starting home church on Wednesdays, Wednesdays and Sundays. You can make that commitment as a family. And it will work. You get in that rhythm. Crazy. You wouldn't believe it.
You say we had a business. We had 2 apartment buildings. I had a design business. I was doing Brewer electric books. Celebrate recovery. Kids. Like it was crazy.
It was, but you can make time as a family to make priority. And
and I think the intentionality is just huge, that, you know, you're going to invest in what like you're currently investing in what matters most to you. And I think that's why inventory, you mentioned that word, you know, inventory, again, I don't know as far as like the 12 steps goes, but for me, inventory isn't just, you know, taking inventory of, you know, where I've come from and what's going on, but it's also taking inventory of like what's important to me, and what do I say is important versus what do I act like is important, and actually separating, because I think a lot of the time we say family is important, but in actuality, no, the boys and going fishing is actually what's important to me, because I put the time in there and not in. So I think that collective inventory of this is what matters, and I'm going to arrange my life.
We would
look at your bank statement and you'll know what's important to you.
You will. And your time where your time goes.
The we call it a daily inventory. It's one of the steps. So it's like one of the things they suggest new in recovery, and we keep doing it is a daily inventory. Do I do it daily? No, but I try to look at it weekly maybe, or it's like, okay. And COVID's been like this season for Julie and I, like about a month ago or so, we realized, you know, I still had some major holes in my recovery. Like you're saying, what's important to me. Like we all, like here at the church,
CR and getting together, that's important to us too. Like still,
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's still
It
something
is, but
we
it
need.
just made me realize when you were saying, hanging with the boys or doing this, like what is really important.
Yeah.
Like what is, like, all I had was time with my family.
Yeah.
And it just, anyway, it
Yeah.
made us realize that recovery is a process, and it's not just addiction.
Yeah.
It's definitely life.
Yeah.
Definitely life.
So accountability, if someone's listening, they're like, I need some keys to get my life in order, and more than just a general kind of Jesus answer, but like, as I follow Jesus, here are some things that I need to kind of take hold of. Accountability, that idea of authority and vulnerability, along with that generosity, giving myself to something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
What's another key?
Well, you touched on it, was inventory.
Yeah.
We already said this, but I would write that down as one, as a daily inventory. Not necessarily don't dig up stuff you've dealt with. That's another problem, is we think, like, I think I still need to deal with my addiction. Listen, man, I'm a pastor at this church, and God's done an amazing work. That is something I need to be aware of for sure.
Yeah.
But there's other things that are way more important right now that I need to be dealing with. Like, if I was going to write down an inventory, I'm not writing down a pill addiction. That's gone. But I need to write down, I don't know what I'm dealing with now. So you were talking about inventory, or daily inventory, keeping an account, what is important. I would say that would be an important number 3.
Yeah.
It's been
But
huge.
even before those steps, before accountability and all that, the biggest thing is stepping out of denial. Where are you at? Like, be real, and realizing you're powerless. Like, we can't do this life, not even the big things, just every day. We have no control. We all realize that over COVID. Like, none of us realize we're powerless, and to just hand over daily, weekly, like all the new things, hand that control over to the Lord, really. And just realize
we have influence, but we're not in control. That's about the best.
Yeah, it's huge. You guys are a gift. I think we should have some more conversations about this.
Absolutely.
Moving forward, because I think maybe that's a good place to sort of leap off for an ending. Is this whole thing is an ongoing process. Like, none of us, your recovery and transformation is not done. Mine's not done.
That's right.
Nope.
And it's something we need to kind of keep in front of us. And I think maybe a big takeaway today is it's not just going to happen. You know, like, you're not just going to change. Like, it takes faith, and again, coming out of denial, it takes surrendering to the higher power, who we believe his name is Jesus. But it also takes other things. It takes intentionality. It takes decision. It takes discipline. Like, that's
hard,
what really
man.
It is. Like, let's just call it what it is.
It doesn't suck, we all have, but it's hard.
Yeah, we all go back to, like, our natural self, I guess. Like, if I did continually work on it, I would go back to wanting to withdraw. Like, the next problem that would come, my natural self would want to withdraw, and like, we go back to those things.
Like, I'm never losing weight on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, oh my word, I lost 15 pounds. No, I'm putting weight on, like, by mistake, like, not even realizing. That's
no way in life, whether it's your marriage, your body, your mind, your character, we don't drift towards health. We drift away from it.
That's
it's like, wow, am I ever healthy? I didn't notice.
And honestly, I think everybody at some point in their life could look at something that maybe was valuable to them, or was like, that was a good thing. You would say, it probably cost me the most, and it probably took the most out of me. And I would say, though, just by way of encouragement, I think this is fair, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but as it comes to this stuff, it's hard for a while, but you can start creating habits where your lifestyle can change, and it's not as, it's like with anything. It's like going to the gym. The first 12, 16 weeks, you're fighting. Oh, I got to eat right. But you do 66, 70, 80 days of something, and you start to form some habits. It's weirder not to do it than it is to do it.
Tuesday is our favorite day of the week. Like, it really is.
Like, for an activity, not
like,
even
we
work.
love it.
Like, like I love Sundays, because, like, it's just those two things where Jesus is present, and we're ministering to people, whether that's Tuesdays or Sundays, or at the beach where we're ministering to people is our favorite thing, seeing them come to Christ. But you're right, Brent, it like I've seen God do enough in my own life that I know when I find something, a thorn in me, or I know he's going to work at it. Like I know I have the skills now that it's going to turn out good. So it's the same idea as you get the 60, 70 days in, it starts to look.
Oh, for sure.
That's why AA is one, like I love that program. And for some of their, I don't want to say rules, but like they do 90 meetings in 90 days. 90 meetings in 90 days. Like, why would you do that?
They give you AA, and then even more so, Celebrate Recovery's taking those steps and kind of make it even more overtly Christian and Christ-based, biblically based. But like it gives you the foundations and the building blocks to be able to start, building a better you by the grace of God. And Jesus said at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, he said, like, whoever hears my words and puts them into practice is like a man who builds a house on a rock, right? And like, here's the deal. I think we've all seen maybe you've built a house, or someone in your neighborhood, they cleared a lot, and then you saw they started to get the stumps out, and they brought the topsoil in, and then they bring in the excavators and they dig out the hole, and then they bring in the cement. And there's like, it seems like that groundwork, the foundation stuff takes a long time.
Yeah.
And then, man, when the crew shows up and like a wall goes up, another wall goes up, and a door comes in, and windows are there, and there's a roof going on, and then all of a sudden they're putting sod down. Yeah. That aesthetic stuff actually starts to come together pretty quick.
That's right.
And things start looking different. It's like an iceberg though. Like, especially when you're really dealing with a lot of deep work recovery stuff. You're getting down to some pretty foundation. Like we talk about codependency, that's a pretty foundational. Yeah, that's deep stuff. Addiction is deep rooted stuff that God needs access. But the good news is when you start giving him that access, and you give him permission to make major foundational changes in your life, after the dust settles on some of that, and you kind of stay committed, and you keep plugging away, man. Yeah, because that's, I think about the 5 years, Adam, it seems like a lifetime ago. I know. And a different person ago, because you're almost unrecognizable, but at the same time, it's only 5 years.
I know.
So, and like, that's the crazy thing. So it might seem, for some people listening, like it might seem like this is, I just started going to church, and it's like nothing's really happening. And like, no,
it's the foundational work. I love how you say that. And then like every now and then, shingle blows off the roof, and I fix the shingle, right? Or a light bulb burns out, or right. You know what I mean? It's not, the foundation's built, and that's there. But like every now and then I got to do some crack filling and build a new deck or whatever. I love the house analogy because it's true. Like when, it's good.
Yeah. And Jesus said, like, we're the ones, like he said, whoever hears my words and puts them into practice is like a man who built. So we're actually the builders in this scenario. Right. God, like Jesus is the rock, the foundation. And then as we build on that foundation, like we're involved, and it's not just that's probably another big misconception we talk about another time we get together, is like, God's grace in our lives is not like sometimes you see some people that's like, I came to the service, I finished my cigarette outside, and I had an alcoholic, and I had him preach, and I cried, and I went to the front, and I didn't have another drink or a cigarette again my whole life.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you do, but the funny thing is those people are typically around volunteering. Like they might think they're not doing the work after, but
even those ones, like there's actually little things going on. It's not as
it's cut and dry.
Maybe it's not as like magical as we make it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it is. But
it's that's right. We don't want to take away from the miracle. It is. It's like next thing you know, they're our best. Like, well, when we had red shirts, they were our best red shirt. It's like, okay, you jumped in after the miracle, you jumped in, and kept working on it. So it's great, really good. Yeah. Well,
guys, thank you. It's been fun, and it's
thank you.
If you're listening to my podcast, make sure you go over and check out the Adam and Julie podcast, because they hit a lot of this stuff a lot and in a lot more detail, and they have testimonies of people who have come up through the ministry here and stuff, and it's just really encouraging. So go check out their podcast, and thanks again for tuning in.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Adam and Julie as much as I did. Hey, if you haven't already, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to this podcast. You could do it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is you get your podcasts, or go to YouTube and subscribe to my channel there. And hey, why don't you check out Adam and Julie's podcast? It's called the Adam and Julie Podcast. They have great stuff there. We'll see you next time.